It's no surprise, folks. Everyone is taking their cell phones out into the backcountry now. For better or worse, you know, you could argue whether that's a good or a bad thing, but today's video, we're gonna talk about our favorite and what we think are the best cell phone apps to take out with you on the trail. You should be utilizing technology if you're bringing it, and the revolution in smartphones has affected backpacking. You know, 10 years ago, we used to never use apps or anything, but there's a smorgasbord of awesome apps that can both make your backpacking experience better and also kind of make it safer. So today's video, Andy and I are gonna go through a bunch of our favorite apps and what we think are the best smartphone apps to take backpacking. But first, remember, click that subscribe button. It's down there somewhere. Click that bell too if you want to know when we go live. We live stream a lot. Speaking of that, check out the podcast if you want to see us, you know, BS around with your favorite outdoors folk. And then also, if you want to get yourself some sweet SBO merch, check out the merch store. The first app I want to talk about, and we're going to start with the best one first, is an app called the Hiking Project. Now, this is an app that there's some connection with REI. I don't know if they created the app or they own it or whatever, but there is some affiliation with the REI, but we love the Hiking Project. The reason we love the Hiking Project so much is you get a lot of features that you normally have to pay for in an app like AllTrails, and we'll talk about AllTrails. But the Hiking Project, it's gonna have all those great features you like of something like AllTrails. You're gonna see elevation profiles, you're gonna see where the trail starts and ends. There might even be some campsites on there, and then it'll also do live tracking of your GPS on the trail. And also the huge advantage is, and you can get this for free, is you can pre-download the trails. So for a free kind of what I talk about as like a turn-by-turn hiking app, Hiking Project is fantastic. Now the biggest downside to the Hiking Project is it's not everywhere, and it does rely on users to create the actual hiking trails. But like, for instance, there's not a lot of stuff out west in Colorado and California on the Hiking Project, but in the Midwest and the East, like West Virginia, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, the hiking trail has a ton of trails preloaded into it, and you can pre-download them. So when you don't have cell service, you can tell exactly where you are on that trail, what elevation's coming up, and then sometimes there will be some comments posted on like recent trail and water conditions. Not always, not as good as some of the other apps we'll talk about, but the Hiking Project for us, because it's free, probably comes in as our #1 favorite app. And if your trail is on the Hiking Project, I would strongly recommend using it. You don't have to be as nerdy as we are and see where you are like every few feet on the trace, but just knowing that you're on the right trail has been beneficial for us. If you check out some of our Cranberry Wilderness videos, there were some times on the trail where the trail just didn't exist, so we needed the live tracking GPS to show us where to go, and the Hiking Project will have that for you.
So I would say probably the most popular GPS hiking app is GutHook, but has now changed their name.
FarOut!
Completely rebranded to FarOut. So it's now called FarOut. So
that's a cooler name.
It is cooler, but you know, GutHook has just got like that.
I know.
But GutHook is super popular. One of the downfalls to GutHook is that it's primarily known for maps of long trails. So like PCT, Colorado Trail, Appalachian Trail, Arizona Trail, Florida Trail, and they actually have the Buckeye Trail on there too.
No way.
Yes, they do.
FarOut.
Yeah, they are a little pricey. Like, for example, the Appalachian Trail, the complete Appalachian Trail GPS map system is $60, but in terms of what you get, it's just phenomenal. You get live GPS tracking, you get mapping of water sources, trail intersections, elevation profiles, different views. It's also like hugely community supported. So for example, people can leave notes about like water sources or what the campsites were like, which has been super helpful for us. We've invested in the Colorado Trail map, we've invested in the Tahoe Rim Trail map. It's just a wealth of information, and if you're doing like a long distance trail, having the complete map in an app form is hugely advantageous, in the ability to like communicate and and see what people are saying is phenomenal. But it's a little pricey. It's a little pricey, and if you're weekend warriors like us and you're doing mainly smaller trails, you're probably not going to have a lot of options. But I mean, if you're one of those people that, you know, is tackling segment of like one of the long trails, it's a good investment. So it's been an awesome app. It's super popular. Everybody uses it.
Another good app, and this one is not as good as the Hiking Project because it's not free, but another great app, and probably one of the oldest apps that have existed, at least in our kind of experience, is AllTrails. So a lot of trails are on AllTrails. It has a lot of similar functionality to something like the Hiking Project. And what I mean by that is you can pre-download the trail, see where you are on the trail. People can post comments on what the trail is like. The reason that this is not our favorite app is because to unlock a lot of the features we talked about, so mainly to be able to pre-download the trail and see where you are on the trail, you have to pay a monthly subscription for that. It's not bad. I think it's like $3 or $4 a month, but it's not free, versus on the Hiking Project, it is free. And I haven't found like a ton more trails on AllTrails versus Hiking Project, but there are different trails on AllTrails. So for example, in Yosemite, a lot of the Yosemite trails are on AllTrails, so I had to use that last summer. But to get that, like, you know, turn by turn, trail by trail functionality that I really like, you do have to pay a monthly subscription to AllTrails. But for a few dollars a month, I think if you're someone who backpacks a lot and the trails you backpack are on AllTrails, I think it's worth it. Another cool thing you can do with AllTrails that you can't really do with some of these other apps is, I think it's kind of cool. You can like plot out and make your trip in the app and plot out like where you're gonna stay each night, and then it'll break it up for you day by day, your elevation, your distance, all that stuff. The trip planning functionality of AllTrails is something that's really cool and not something we see in something like Hiking Project or something like that. But a great app. If the trail you're going for is on there, use it. It's also like Hiking Project. AllTrails has a good computer interface, so if you're trying to do some recon on your computer on the website, it's got you covered. And also like Hiking Project, people will post comments of the trail, and that honestly is some of the most useful features of these apps, are people will post comments on the conditions of certain water sources, of certain campsites, that kind of stuff. So a great app. It's just not free like the Hiking Project, so that's why it'll come in like right underneath there.
Gaia GPS. This was the first GPS app that I used because it was available for iPhones. It's a great app. I don't use it anymore though because I don't want to pay the fee that it now charges. I think it's like $35 a year. I could be wrong about that. I haven't used it in a little while now. In terms of usage, it does everything that all the other major GPS apps do. Tracking, trip planning, waypoints, you can see notes, you can save stuff, you can download stuff, you can create your own trips, you can save your trips, you can log everything. And I would say that that's pretty standard in a lot of like the pay GPS apps. One of the cool things about Gaia that I noticed is like you could use like 2 or 3 different types of maps if they were available, which was cool. You could use like the standard like US Forest Service maps. They also had a few different other options which were really nice. It's a good app. It does everything that all the other apps do, but I'm just, you know, with competition out there, I'm just not a fan of paying for it anymore. Another app that's really good, it's not as popular now because you have apps like Hiking Project and AllTrails, but another app we used to use a lot a few years ago, or I used because it's an Android specific app, is an app called Backcountry Navigator Pro. It is not free. The Pro license I think is like 10 or 15 bucks. The reason I like that app is because one, you can pre-download maps, which I like, but you get the option of pre-downloading any sort of topo or like, you know, geographic map. That can be really helpful in addition to satellites. So like for instance, Hiking Project, you can't necessarily in some places pre-download things like Google satellite images, and satellite images
can be very helpful. But Backcountry Navigator Pro, 1, will have a bunch of campsites marked on it, and 2, there's a variety of different topo maps you can pre-download, which are really cool, which the other apps kind of lack. So it's a great app. The reason I got it back in the day was because Gaia GPS, which we'll talk about, didn't exist on Android devices, and Backcountry Navigator Pro was like the Gaia for Android phones. So a good app. It has its uses. You know, if the trail you want to hike on is not on Hiking Project, not on AllTrails, not on any other app, Backcountry Navigator Pro will probably have it. So it's another good option for Android devices. Next little app, and this is going to be a little cheeky, but I've had to use it before, but good old Google Maps and Google Earth. Honestly,
have used that.
We've used it before. It is worth going to your area that you're going to be, you know, on Google Maps before you get there, and pre-downloading the maps and specifically the satellite layers of Google Maps. We've had to use them before. Totally free, totally easy. Don't sleep on Google Maps and Google Earth for your satellite needs. You can pre-download them. And also bonus, there are a lot of trails on Google Maps now. Not all of them, but Google Earth, Google Maps, it's worth pre-downloading data in case you need the satellite maps, because satellite maps can be very helpful. 2 apps I'm gonna kind of bundle together. I think they're really good. It depends if you're in the Garmin ecosystem, but both the Garmin EarthMate app and the Garmin Connect app. So the Garmin EarthMate app is the app that goes with the Garmin InReach GPS devices. So a great app if you want to text and send people, you know, breadcrumbs or links to where your live GPS to where you are live. The Garmin EarthMate app that'll be the app you use. It has really good functionality with your phone. You just Bluetooth your phone to your device and then use the app, and you can text from your phone anywhere in the world with your satellite connection. So the Garmin EarthMate app is really good. If you're someone like me who uses Garmin watches, the Garmin Connect app, that's kind of like, you know, Apple Health, like Strava, but the Garmin Connect app is really cool, and this is just for things like tracking your hikes, looking at elevation and stuff when you're home, that kind of stuff, like a typical GPS tracking watch. But the app that goes with it, the Garmin Connect app, is really good. So I'm a Garmin fanboy, and their apps are really good and worth using in the outdoors. Couple honorable mentions to some classes of apps we don't use but would probably be a good idea. So one are like those super cool constellation ones where I don't know any off the top of my head, Google it, but the ones you can stick your camera up in the air at night and you can see where the constellations are, that's kind of cool. And another thing I've always wanted to get into are like those apps that can identify plants and fungus and that kind of stuff. You know, we don't do any of that, but I've always thought it's cool, and I think there are some really cool ones that you can pay for that will tell you, like, you can take a picture of a plant and it'll tell you what it is. So kind of some honorable mentions there. And then the third honorable mention, it's not an app yet, but you know, our friends over at Art of the Trek, they're doing some real cool stuff with mapping, with campsites, with points of interest. It's all from your computer right now, but for trip planning, it's a great free resource to also use.
So to summarize this wealth of information we've just bestowed on you, the GPS app that you're gonna use is gonna be trail dependent. Just like all these different streaming services, Netflix, HBO Max, you know, they each kind of specialize in their own trail system, unfortunately. So that kind of sucks sometimes, but also it's kind of cool too. We really like the concept of community supported apps as well, so where you can see people leave comments and give updates about certain things and trail conditions. That has been super helpful. Another thing that's really important to us is live tracking, which most of our apps do, as well as the ability to download the map, of course. So those are really, really important. I would probably venture to say that most people who backpack a lot probably have like 2 to 3 GPS apps on their phone just to be able to tackle whatever trail system they're going to be on. So find what works for you. There are plenty of free options out there to give it a shot, and then if you you know, find one that you like and you feel like it's worth the investment, a lot of the pay ones are well worth it. So that's all we have. Like, subscribe, leave us comments below about your apps that you use, maybe some other, you know, advantages or disadvantages of what we mentioned that we forgot to bring up. So talk to you all later.